Good day, folks. This is Bob in the house, in the studio on this Saturday evening for the first time, pre Holi. So happy Holi to all the listeners. I hope you guys join in and listen to this really, really interesting video that I'm doing today of stuff that you may know, may not know. It's how domestic politics is playing out in the foreign arena, and how similarly our foreign policy is being portrayed in the media in India. Start off from how what happened in Russia. Our hearts go out to all the families. Gunmen opened fire at hall near Russian capital. The breaking news from the US is that 90 are definitely dead. The funny part is, 2 weeks ago, if anybody was reading the press out of the United States and the Western world, the US had already warned against such a strike in Moscow. Get it? In Moscow for 2 weeks. So I just wonder what Putin is up to, and is he really got what is going for him? I mean, he seems to be totally so focused on an unwinnable war that he doesn't care about his people, right? The second thing is, what is happening in the foreign press as far as domestic politics is concerned? Because everybody knows this is an election in India and it's a biggie. Just like the one that's coming up in the United States, that's like the one that's coming up in UK. But both these elections are basically going to, and everybody's kind of figured it out, it's going to change the way democracy is defined, whether it's here, whether it's there, because everybody, the entire global press is playing out on the facts of CAA, that is anti-Muslim and nothing else, irrespective of what we try and say. Secondly, everybody's, whether it's the New York Times, Washington Post, CNN, have all spoken about Soren's arrest, and now classically the arrest of Arvind Kejriwal in Delhi. So basically what it's playing out is that all chiefs of states and heads of opposition parties are being put in jail. That's how headlines are being read globally, right? So it's not really going down that well, and especially stuff like this. Adani Group stocks bond falls as the US said to widen probe. US prosecutors have widened their probe to investigate whether an Adani company or people linked to it, including group chairman Gautam Adani, were involved in a payoff to officials in India for favorable treatment on energy projects. And this could shutter a lot of funding possibilities for Adani. Here, Adani stocks bonds under pressure over probe in the US. LIC shares slip after 17%. So this is a funny thing, right? So Adani's has kind of has partnered with a US company to build a port in Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka is one of the few neighbors that seems to be now more in tune with India's policy, even though recently I just read that the Indian Navy is saying, I'm not sure what they're doing about it. We are watching very carefully as another spy ship enters some port in Sri Lanka. We haven't gotten better of that. But more or less you have a situation where, since nobody seems to have come out on the streets against an Indian project, especially one related to Adani, because that actually lost solely the elections in Maldives. I am told now that people, firstly, Afcons was doing a really shoddy job as far as that bridge is concerned. It was really taking its own sweet time. And there was this multi-purpose port project which was for naval ships or boats that were which was not explained completely. And why we didn't read it, I don't know. Where was our intelligence, I don't know. But what happened is that Male was able to create a narrative that, and this current Misuzu was able to create an impression that that this was all crony capitalists, and specifically Adani. It's amazing. Afcons has nothing to do with Adani, right? But still, we were not able to get our view across. Maybe we're just too laid back, because everywhere else you find that everybody's indebted to China, and still there are no political parties out there making an issue about it. Whereas every time there is an election, India is definitely the issue with anybody who is not in power, whether it's in Sri Lanka, there it is Rajpaksa, whether it's in Maldives, which was Yamin, and now this gentleman, whether it's in Nepal, it's Oli, whether it's in Bangladesh, it's Khalida Zia. So all these people play us as the bad guys. I can't figure that one out, right? And while in the US, like what I said, India student dies in US probe, rules out foul play, record migration student visa rules set to be tightened. This is in Australia, and for the first time in Canada, guess who's going to get hit? India. Rupee falls 4 paisa to settle at 82.90. In fact, now it's gone to 83 something. India is seen as safer bet for supply chain, says Irish minister. And this is all possible if there is democracy and the rule of law in this country. It's not going to happen otherwise. And the world is now, and this is the world that actually is responsible for the FDI and investment. It's not the world that's responsible for bond money or stock market money. That's a different world altogether, right? Now, see how foreign policy is playing out in our domestic papers to show that we are whatever, we are the big guys, right? We got to rap on the knuckle, slap on the face as far as Maldives was concerned. We were asked that our troops should be out. In fact, he's been insisting, and apparently in May the last guys will leave. They're being replaced by somebody from the HAL. HAL to manage the helicopters. Thank God they didn't allow, but they didn't force us to take those too. In the meantime, he's also gone and got some drones from Turkey. But in order to show that, hey, look at it, they come back to us. We have this. Pro-China Maldives president seeks debt relief from close ally India. After forcing Indian military personnel out, Muizu seeks debt relief from India. So now, and both of these are unnamed agencies and so on and so forth, which means these are just being planted. What are they trying to show? I can tell you. They're trying to show that, hey, we are still number one, right? But Bhutan, guys, you got to figure this out, right? Why is the Prime Minister in Bhutan now? Why is he running now in the middle of elections where there is complete chaos in India, whether it is the farmers, whether it's the arrest of Kejriwal, whether that's the first time ever, whether it's the people on the street in Delhi? You got to figure this out. But before, let's see how the papers are projected. India trusted partner of Bhutan, Tobagi. Top Bhutan honor for PM transforming ancient civilization to dynamic tech center. China objects to US recognizing Arunachal as Indian territory. That's all we have, right? Ladakh turns restive over unkept promises. Just have to really, really worry about this. With talks between Ladakh leadership and union government failing, Wanchuk has started a fast on to death and the region is heating up again. And here again, we're playing into China's hands because there's enough information to tell us that they're kind of slowly encroaching the Tibetan monasteries with lamas from Tibet, right? And now about Bhutan. Okay, then we have Pankaj Saran, right? India's neighborship, it's not about who's big, who's small. A National Security Advisory Board member explains why Modi began both his terms with a visit to Bhutan and will close the second term with another visit there. With Modi's Bhutan visit tells us about China influence a lot. It says it has focused more on resolving the boundary dispute with China. Thimphu held the 25th round of boundary talks with Beijing in 2023 after a gap of 7 years and stunned many, including those in India. Many by claiming Bhutan was within a hairbreadth of resolving the boundary issue. Careful that these efforts are not detrimental to India's security interests, Bhutan has kept India only suitably, informed. However, with the talks now in final stages, Bhutan remains cagey about any Indian military-related initiative passing through its territory, like the proposal to build a road from Tawang in Arunachal to Bhutan. Folks, here's the worry. This is not a visit which is being projected as grandstanding, getting the award, road show, etc., etc. It's about the fact that Doklam is all but gone. And when you look at what's happened to Bhutan since the last Doklam standoff, you look at it here, right? Let me show it to you here. These orange spots, including Doklam, are in the hands of China already. Okay, look at this. These are two maps showing how in Bayul, Khenpajong, how the presence of a small little village has grown, Chinese village has grown that big. And look at here. So what happens is Doklam, right? Delhi must be prepared to counter Beijing's law warfare. This is what's important, as written by Prabhash Ranjan. Recent reports of China settling people in the village called Xiaokang along its border with India are disturbing. Since 2019, China has been constructing villages, double-story, large and expansive buildings along the LAC in Ladakh and Arunachal Pradesh. This Chinese action is not some ad hoc activity. Xiaokangs are being constructed from a strategic perspective as part of Chinese LBL that came into force in January 2022. China enacted the LBL after Doklam clashes. It signals China's resolve to settle land border disputes with countries like India on its terms and emphasize civilians' cooperation with China's PLA in land border defense. Now that, folks, is the challenge. The real story about Bhutan is a last-ditch effort to save Doklam, because if Doklam goes, you then get Nepal into play. Because Oli, we've just heard Jaishankar had a really hot tete-a-tete fisticuff with Oli. Oli loves China. Remember, he is dyed-in-the-wool communist. He doesn't care about religion. Now, why are we doing what we are doing and losing the plot in Nepal? Is simply this. Like, let's say what Subhajit Roy writes. Amid Nepal's political turmoil task for India, Prachananda must stabilize the economy, undertake reforms, crack down on corruption and build infrastructure. India must step up cooperation in all these areas. India can't, because what happens here? New Delhi's position on the politics and nature of Nepal must remain nuanced and flexible, with the people of Nepal at its center, which has never been, only the Mahadesis. It must ensure that China or its proxies do not get any opportunity to ride on suspicion or prejudice against India. More than an elder brother, India should seek to be an equal partner for Nepal. This is where we failed. The reason is this government, especially driven by the ethos of Hindu Raj, Hindu last kingdom, they want Nepal to go back to its old ways of a kingdom, right? Back to a dynasty, right? Which these communists have fought. That's why the communists really don't like this particular government. Congress they could still handle, but this particular government they do not like, because they see what is it that we are trying to do. We're trying to override, basically go back to a Maharaja and a Hindu Rashtra in Nepal for obvious reasons. And that's where we've overplayed, plus the fact that if you remember, recently we banned rice exports. The three countries that really got hurt were Nepal, Bangladesh and Bhutan. And hence, the people of all these three countries, even though we allowed it subsequently, are feeling seriously let down. And that's why China is able to get a huge play in all the countries that are in our neighborhood. And you sometimes wonder, don't you guys, why isn't there a political backlash against China for its debt that is created in Sri Lanka and the poverty in Maldives and Nepal? It never happens. Point to ponder. Pak thwarts attack on CPEC's Gada port, 7 militants killed, and Pakistan has its own set of troubles. And I don't personally think Pakistan is the real problem for us at this point in time, because it's got Iran problems with Iran, which is just barely settled, and it's got problems with Afghanistan. Now look at this. 7 soldiers die in terror attack on Pak army post near Afghanistan border. Taliban hits back at Pakistan after strikes in Afghanistan kill 8. Balochistan is up in war. Baloch separatists attack Pakistan's Gwadar port, 11 dead. Afghanistan, at least 20 die in suicide bombing in Kandahar. And then you have Pakistan's Taliban problem on either side of the Afghanistan border. And this is exactly it. So Pakistan, to my mind, along with the economy and a completely tumultuous domestic policy and politics basically, is least of India's problems. India's biggest problem is that, as that guy pointed out, the LBL. I am told it's not only active in Ladakh, it's not only active in Arunachal, also parts of Uttarakhand. And we are not told, and that's the big worry, right? But where we are singing, where we are showing signs of presence is in the Gulf. US Defense Secretary Lord's Indian Navy role in anti-piracy ops. Navy rescues hijacked MV 2600 km from mainland. Blinken tours Mideast as war pushes Gaza towards famine. US urges immediate truce at UN as Gaza war grinds on. And this, like I said, the policy is doing well for India, the Middle East, except that I think again, here again, things like CAA and the way Al Jazeera and all the other peoples have played out is not going to sing well on the street of the Middle East, which is critical to us. As Raja Mohan writes, an Arabian Valentine. Delhi's relationship with the Gulf has transformed over last decade, marks a diplomatic success, he says. The Swaminarayan temple in Abu Dhabi reflects an important new trend that is not truly appreciated in India. The outflow of radical Islamic ideas from Arabia in the last quarter of the 20th century had negatively affected the subcontinent. Today, religious conservatism at home and the export of radicalism abroad in Arabia are yielding place, especially in the UAE and Saudi Arabia, to growing religious tolerance. The unfolding social and religious reform in Arabia would hopefully dampen the rise of religious extremism across the subcontinent and help restore harmony between different religions and sects. And this is an important point that Raja Mohan makes, okay? And then an idea page. He says an election debate not joined. With India's growing international clout, interest has grown in foreign policy, but opposition has not challenged the government even in run-up to elections, and that is so true. What does he write? The last decade has seen a dramatic expansion of popular interest in foreign policy. The rapid proliferation of think tanks, the increasing contribution of retired bureaucrats, and the explosion of social media engagement with Indian diplomacy have created the basis of a genuine democratization of foreign policy discourse. However, much of the output tags to the government line. Some tend to be hyper-nationalistic, and a bit of partisan sniping does break into the discourse to complete the picture. And that, folks, can only change if the domestic opposition comes up with its own ideas. But the point of the matter is, folks, as we go into next year's election, this year, the world will look very different. What if it's Modi, Trump, Netanyahu, and Putin? Well, Putin is sure he's already in, right? But the world will change. Will it change for Xi? Will it change for Putin? But if Trump comes in, it definitely is a big worry for both Xi and for Prime Minister Modi. Because one thing he doesn't like is a trade surplus. The second thing he doesn't like is illegal immigrants, where today India is the biggest supplier of illegal immigrants crossing over, and the combination is Punjab and Gujarat. And the third thing he doesn't like is a personal affront, which means he thought he had a personal chemistry with the Prime Minister, right? Abki Bar, Modi Sarkar, etc. But hey, he's now wondering, what the hell? Why did he turn turtle and go towards go with Blinken and with Biden, right? Similarly, Netanyahu is not his favorite guy. He likes the Arab world a lot better. And he thinks that what Netanyahu has done has completely destroyed his Abraham Accord, which was leading to this great I-2-U-2 road that was going to build from India all the way to Europe. He doesn't do that. But on the other hand, what if it is not Modi, Putin, and Trump? Or if it is not Modi, Biden, and not Netanyahu, but Putin, obviously? It will be a different world altogether. Lots of stuff going to happen this year, folks. Don't take anything for granted. These are democracies that can surprise you, like in 1977. 3 cheers and Jai Hind.